The light was cutting edge with a lot of facets, from robotics, nanorobotics, even techno-sorcery. One of the more interesting things that spawned from them is the whole perpetuation of clones throughout the series. People are sort of copies of each other, a bit of a existentialism, where their place is, so I figure right here, I talk a wee bit about them clones. Kind of an interesting thing to zone in on. But first, the most obvious, Superboy. He is luckily the simplest out of the main set of clones, in part because he came out already knowing he was a clone. He knew he was created to be a weapon to replace Superman should he perish, should he fray from the light. Of course, later the rebellious team of heroes gives him hopes of free will, and he decides to be his own man. The most notable aspects later on are seeing himself next to Superman, and the fact he's in fact a clone mix, Superman and Lex Luthor. Kind of interesting to think. Like, for example, this guy has anger issues, so he gets stubbornness a bit from Superman, because he's so good and cool. He always does the right thing and gets away with it more. But he also has bits of Lex's insecurity, which could feed into the stubbornness he's also predisposed to in a negative way. Likes of no capes, no tights, no offense.
No capes, no tights. No offense.
There's a fair bit to read into, like how earlier seasons actually seem to be much more pro Lex Luthor with how cool and suave he is, and after initial negative readings on Superman. Later on, the show decided they really liked Superman, especially in season 4, with the guy having a major redemption. You know, we all been there, I've been there, James Gunn's been there, where we've had iffy opinions on Superman, then we decided, you know what, we really like Superman. So as far as Superman doing wrong takes go, I actually like this version of Superman even in season 1, where he's been a neglectful mentor figure towards Superboy and part of not knowing what to do with him. Like, the quandary of an illegitimate clone of yourself is much more interesting than acting like you're right about everything. Also, I've recently gone to Titan Season 4. First I really seen a season of the show. I'll get into more later, but I'll just say, what a bizarre take on Superboy. It's also worth noting there's Match, who is like the original Superboy clone, only he was made with pure Kryptonian DNA, which somehow proved to be too unstable for cloning process. Sort of like this universe is a bizarro, kind of like how Mothflak was more for Miss Martian over Martian Manhunter in this universe. There might be more to read in here, but I'll get to it when I get to of all things Ocean Master. Anyway, next to Roy's. This is an end of the season reveal. The Roy all along has been cloned, brainwashed puppet. Superboy also had some residual programming. At least all it did was just freeze him. Here it also freezes him, but also mind controls him to do stuff. This leads to a whole new adventure where he finds the original Roy, and there's even this other clone. A lot of it's really interesting to read into because originally Jim Harper seemed to have been an uncle to Roy. However, it turned out to be an accelerated clone of the original Roy again. It's not directly stated, but strongly implied. It's just in season 2 he brings up he never found out about the original Jim Harper, and then later on in season 3 we get an offhanded line about how he's the youngest and prettiest of all of them. Really wild stuff. The light were really playing gods. So in other words, we get a sense that Roy really very much is a nobody. He thought he had an uncle, but turned out it was just a clone of him. He's just an orphan abused by the system that is the light. The whole thing of multiple Roys often seems to be the thing that tripped up some new viewers, even though that was like the big plot point in season 1. It's really interesting seeing them explore the perceived sense of identity. At this point, the original Roy actually has the least to go off in life. He really had it rough. Also interesting comparing to comics, or while this was all part of one big story, now they separate the tragic parts of Roy, the original with the severed arm, as the version with Leon gets to live on with his normal life. That's pretty wild. A lot to delve in for Roy clones, who all have red hair. We may have found a solution to Gingercide. I double checked to look up clones to make sure I got them all, and it seemed I actually did. However, there's this one honorable mention one of a Lobo clone. He's not really like the others, no genetic engineering, just part of Lobo's weird powers. He only appeared in the end credits of one episode, which happened to be the finale of season 3. Now, the final set of clones, which might bring up the greatest questions, are that of Ocean Master. Now, for starters, Ocean Master from the Young Justice universe might be the most, let's say, could have led to the worst possible outcome out of any DC guy here. It's that wild. Like, you know in Justice how Joker took out Superman's family? Imagine that, but for all the superhero families. He's going to take out all of them, the nuclear option.
Please, I am Orm, the Ocean Master, and Prince of Atlantis. Prince, I should be king. Instead, I spent 6 years inside an Atlantean prison. 6 years! I revenge.
And this is Ocean Master, normally perceived as Diet Loki. And we haven't seen him in a while. We just heard in season 2 he was born disgraced and replaced by Black Manta. But here it's like, whoa, this is something else. Luckily, Lady Shiva ends up beheading him, saving the whole DC universe here as we know it. Now later on, it gets really interesting when there's an altercation in Atlantis where a clone of Ocean Master attacks, as well as a clone as Aaron. And Arian is in fact Ocean Master's transplanted consciousness. Like, this is wild to think. So most of the time, the clones are just like empty vessels, like newly born babies or maybe confused reincarnated souls. You hear it's like, yeah, we just transported someone's mind in someone else's. Sure, why not? Let's be immortals, baby. Now, as far as trusting Ocean Master, well, he is clearly this universe's biggest menace. Aquaman wouldn't even visit him all while I was in prison. Having all the memories and perception of the original Ocean Master, he technically didn't live those experiences, so to be charged for crimes. So while the original Ocean Master in Arian's body, the Lords of Order just fried him. This other version, I don't even know who I am. Sort of like the Roy situation, but at least the 2 clone Roys had lived experiences to help shape them a little. And at least clone Superboy didn't have a change of identity other than wanting to be free. This is a guy that just was set on destroying Aquaman's life, and then that wasn't even me, who I am. Can we even trust this guy to be let free? Wild stuff. Overall, the perception of clones is really interesting throughout the series. Clones have always been a pervasive thing without comics. And here it's like, makes you think. What would you do if you were a clone? Seeing yourself in relation to other? Would you throw stuff all away? How would you do? Interesting stuff. Anyway, cheers.